Welcome to another episode of CX On Point. I'm Alicia Leszewski, and I'm here with my partner in crime, Ken Epstein. How are you, Ken?
Doing great, Batman. How are you?
Good, good. I figured I'd start with a different way to introduce, because
That's
we
right.
are talking about the government and we are not criminals. We are just here making an honest living in CX. So we're excited to have you with us, Evan. Welcome.
Thanks, Alicia. Hey, Ken.
Hey,
Awesome,
how are you?
awesome. So if you have not ever heard of the Mr. Evan Davis, Evan Davis is actually a senior executive with Maximus, and Maximus is a top 20 systems integrator for the federal, state, and local governments. It's a huge company, and Evan has really spent his entire career focused on providing CX and HCD and contact center solutions for the federal government, which you can imagine is massive. This is going to be a very interesting conversation because everything that you do, Evan, touches all of us. And when I really think about that, and really the work that you guys do at Maximus really touches all of us that live anywhere in the US. So it's excited to see you guys talk about really what's happening in the space, what's happening with AI in this government CX space, and really what are some of the challenges that you guys are facing and the solutions to that. So I think that is kind of all the things we're going to cover today, Ken, and probably a bit more, right?
Probably. You never know, Alicia, where these things take us, but the conversations are always so interesting. I'm so excited to have Evan. Thank you so much for spending some time with us today. I think folks are going to get a lot out of the conversation. Working with you guys over the past several years, actually quite a few years, uh, it's very interesting to me how much different CX world is when you're dealing in government than dealing in corporate America, which is frankly my background. So maybe a good way for us to just sort of start the conversation. Government CX, what's the difference between CX and the federal government space, and how similar are the challenges agencies faced by those faced by our industry?
Oh, yeah, great. Uh, I think many of the challenges, Ken, are really similar. I think in some ways, the what the entire country and many CX practitioners around the world have faced, especially in the last 5 years, follows roughly the same train, right? I think right now you've got sort of a big three that we likely all have in common. You have uh, direct impacts from COVID, from the pandemic, particularly the move to remote work, and for us especially, we'll I'm sure talk about the culture of working for government agencies and working for mission. How do you retain that? How do you hold on to the culture of your company and the culture of your workforce in a remote environment, as well as the nuts and bolts of how do you manage it, and how do you train, how do you recruit? I think we're also dealing with very similar challenges in caller and customer expectations. That industry has certainly set a bar for what customers expect, and government agencies and our clients and companies like ours are working tightly to try to narrow any gap between how the tools and the approaches that government uses to provide that service and what's used in industry. Uh, and then I think the third common challenge is workforce, is talent. I think we're all in a challenging hiring time right now. We're dealing with extremely low unemployment rates and a lot of competition, and so there's a lot of work to be done in providing employee experience and what you do within those spaces. Again, going back to remote work, especially in that environment, to ensure that you identify the best people for especially these really crucial, life altering missions. Frankly, people don't call the government on their best day, and so there's a real need there. Now there are some differences too, for sure. I think one of the largest is government agencies tend to procure in narrower chunks, tend to evolve a bit more step at a time. And that's driven by a lot of things. It's driven by the fact that they tend to put out longer term contracts with contractors. And so that locks you in for one component of your CX, either tech stack or solution or approach, locks you in on one for some period of time. And while in a modern sense, we might talk about that as modular, as being flexible. Historically, that's meant disparate, stovepiped. And so the government, so some government agencies are struggling now with having developed components at separate times and potentially under separate visions. What does that mean around legacy code and legacy systems?
And interesting, your constituents. So, bank does CX and they serve bank customers. Cable company, CX, they service people watching cable TV. Your constituents are basically the entire country.
Yeah.
Everybody is your constituent. So you're servicing so many different people from different walks of life. There's no cookie cutter answer that solves everybody's issue. So you have to think about that. But you said you were talking about modularity, and how do you address that need for modularity? It's a different world.
It is. I think though that it's an exciting time for it. I think that for the first time in a long while, we're able at Maximus at least to look at customers' CX approaches and technology where they are today, and look at what they're interested in or available in changing at that moment. Let's say maybe their knowledge-based knowledge management contract is running out, and so they're interested in using the next contract, the next ability to procure knowledge management services. They want to use that to modernize, and so for the first time in a while, we're able to now look at that and say, sure, we can come in and help take what exists today and find the right modular overlays. I think of it like, on TV when you see like architectural firms presenting new blueprints, new diagrams to a customer, they'll show first a really nice colorful picture of the building as it exists today,
Right.
and then transparent overlays over it to say, here's a function we can add. Here's what it looks like with plants. Here's what it looks like with new windows. And for the first time in a long while, the systems and tools that are available today both are modular enough and flexible enough and have interplay with multiple telephony systems and multiple core CRMs that really helpful tools we're able to implement and sit in and not only plug in for modularity in the short term, but also plug in tools that we know how to integrate with modern sets for the rest of their needs, so that as in the future, as their ability to procure or require, say, new quality systems or new workforce systems or new web portals, that we're then able to better integrate between the new systems that we're putting out one at a time.
It's interesting. You and I were talking the other day about government contracts and how typically long-term the engagements are.
Yeah.
I'm sure and it's funny you mentioned evolve, and we talk about evolution a lot, by the way, on all of these episodes we're talking about, because everything is evolving. So, and we'll get into that a little bit, but with the evolution within CX, I mean, you need to consider the lifespan of the components of an engagement. Like we talked, I think it was about census, and you work on that for 10 years before you actually go live with it, that you actually implement your solution. So your solution set today may not even exist 5, 8 years from now, or it may be better 5, 8 years from now, or there's something completely different. So how do you, that's gotta be just drive you crazy. How do you manage that?
It does. So you do a few things, Ken. Uh, First, as you assess the industry and choose what investments as a company you're going to make in your partnerships, you look for those vendor partners that you do your due diligence, you do your research, and first you make sure that you're identifying partners that are one gonna be there for the long run.
Right?
Um, and two, it does cause you to gauge um, the sort of 5-year expected roadmap and weight that more importantly, even than where they may be today. So if I looked at two companies, and this happens to be the case right now for,
Right.
say, telephony and CRM, you might look at two companies, one of whom, you know, still has a good lead position in functionality and in feature set, but another one whose curve is rising faster. I'm going to go with the faster rising curve,
Yeah.
right? Because in part, even contracts that tend to run 5 years, 7 years, maybe 10 years, that even contracts that you might get awarded and get to serve the government on today, if they're done correctly, insist on continuous improvement over the duration of the contract. What the government wants to avoid, what our colleagues and friends want to avoid, is making an investment, making a purchase now, getting a boost, and then being stagnant for 7 years or for 5 years, right? So you have to make sure that you're selecting tools that are going to match that evolution need. So frankly, what we do is we look at what the industry leans on, and then figure out with those vendors, with top industry vendors, how to make the changes or make the conversions in order to make them appropriate for and secure for government work.
It's interesting because I would imagine that the agency that you're preparing a solution for that far in advance, their needs may change too by the time we actually go live, or by the time we actually get down to the decision-making process as to what we're going to deploy. So you really have to be on your toes for everything, don't you?
Well, I think that many agencies have learned to prioritize rigor, program management, and flexibility and agility above even tool choice. That they know they want partners. Frankly, it's the same that we do when we're looking for partners and subcontractors, right? We want people with proven flexibility and agility and proven program management, because as a general rule, you've got to have the rigor of baselining in order to be able to rapidly pivot off of that. And and believe me, I know this is true in industry as well, but it's stunning. It'll floor you how fast things will change for a government agency. I'll give you a quick example, even setting aside the truly unpredictable. We support FEMA, for example, with you guys, right? Helping us out and helping out survivors. And so, of course, you don't know when unfortunately there's going to be a hurricane or wildfires. But even outside of that, the world of legislation and regulation can change so rapidly. I think back to 2020 and the economic impact payment program out of the IRS, where following the advice of economists, the IRS began releasing economic impact payments out to households throughout America. And one of the things they learned is to have the biggest impact on an immediate basis, that instead of a big check come March or April, come refund time, that distributing that monthly would have an immediate and lasting impact on things like childcare. And enormously successful program during its time, lifted, you know, almost half the children that are under the poverty line in America up above the poverty line for the first time in years. But massively transformational, right? Overnight, the IRS transformed from being a tax collector into being a benefit provider to constituents, and that's in the matter of hours.
Probably the one event that singularly changed the way we do everything. I mean, from a business perspective to a virtual perspective, from the IRS becoming a payer to a collector to a payer. You know, what was the effect of the pandemic? I know one of the things for sure I recall is we worked very closely with you on developing work from home, which was verboten before that. And all of a sudden, that's like the only way we get it done. So there had to be a lot of sort of scrambling around, particularly on the government side, to accommodate all these changes.
Oh, absolutely. And believe me, every agency, every need was a little bit different, right? So some agencies absolutely insisted minute one, send them home, get it, you know, figure it out, right? Whether you have the technology to support it, or the equipment or not, make it happen. Other agencies had very specific requirements, and particularly around security, and so needed to instead find very creative ways to keep people in the office. And what does that mean for safety and so on? Then certainly I think the two biggest changes, obviously, as you mentioned, Ken, the work from home and remote footing position has really changed dramatically. Agencies and partners of ours that had maybe barely considered you know, the possibility of allowing for some remote work may now be running completely remotely from a vendor standpoint for the foreseeable future. And we learned a lot, and all shout out, frankly, learned a lot from you guys, right? So knowing that so many of our clients had insisted on brick and mortar facilities for a long time, and we got really good at building up culture and building up operations and efficiency that worked in that environment. We knew that we were going to need some guidance and some partnership in that change. You guys, of course, did a phenomenal job. We can't thank you enough. But we learned a couple of things, right? Well, one, we learned to start relying more on technology than we had in the past. So I'll give you an exciting example for me right now. We were used to, our supervisors were used to, I think a lot of people in industry, learning a lot about the feel of what was going on both throughout the center and on individual calls by walking the hall, right? You'd walk between cubes, you'd listen in, and you could tell a good supervisor knows when someone sounds like maybe they're going a little off script, right? That doesn't feel like the flow of the call. Or worse, right? Maybe it's a crisis call or an escalation. We lost the ability to do that overnight. So we began looking for tools, consulted with you guys, and came up with some paths to do out of the box, for starters, real-time transcription and real-time sentiment analysis.
Yeah.
Turns out, as helpful as those are, and they truly are, it opened the door up for a couple of new and exciting approaches over the last 4 years that wouldn't have been possible without them. First, it really changes the way we look at management in the supervisor role. We've for a long time been able to use tools to visualize a large number of CSRs on calls, agents on calls, and look at the basic metrics that we measured 5 years ago, frankly, because they were what we knew how to measure, right? Because they were the data that was in front of us. So I could tell you who's on a call and how long the call's going on. I can tell you whether somebody's on hold. I can tell you if somebody's on break and the break's been 25 minutes instead of 15, right? I could have told you that 5 years ago. But what we started being able to do is say, wait a second, if we're pulling in a real-time transcript, word for word as it goes, and we're pulling in real-time sentiment analysis, then couldn't we very behind the scenes start having AI tools look at and alert supervisors on both sides of the phone conversation? Sure, your agent sounds great and sounds on flow, but your caller is starting to get distraught and you might want to listen in. Or this has some phrasing in it that sounds like maybe it's going to get escalated to Congress. Or maybe, that this person, unfortunately, this happens in the government space, maybe calling in and during the course of it, issue a threat of harm or self-harm or harm to government or government facilities. And we're now able to pick that up instantly because of those tools that we developed just to keep track. The other huge piece, Ken, of course, is you can't get out of any conversation on CX or probably anything else, over the last 6 months without somebody talking about AI. And it's an interesting balance, right? In the government space, as much as anywhere else, probably very similar to banking. You don't mess around with the message that you're conveying to callers. The responses that you give are fixed for a reason, right? There's a correct answer to the question, and these are issues that are affecting people's lives and livelihoods. You don't mess around with it, you get it right. So responsible use of AI is you don't put it close to that direct constituent facing component. What we can do is back it up a step or two and say, well, wait a second, if I'm already doing a real-time transcript and real-time sentiment analysis, and if I'm alerting on things that I hear, why not review calls from our best agents over time and build up tools to live assist active agents, maybe our newer agents, to help them become their best agents, their best selves as quickly as possible. Just give them some tips as they go along. Hey, you're responding like this. For what it's worth, I heard why. You might want to take a look at it. Are these links that are helpful for you? And those kinds of advancements that we're able to bring now really only possible because, frankly, of the changes ultimately caused by the pandemic.
Evolution. Again, we talk about evolution a lot, and I think the effect of the pandemic created a situation where things evolved a lot faster than they may otherwise have, simply by need. I do a ton of work supporting healthcare organizations,
Right.
and they like AI, but there's a lot of trepidation too because of security, because of HIPAA, because of PII. How close do you want to let it get? How does the government feel? How do these agencies that you work with, do they embrace it? Are they afraid of it? Are they arm's length from it? What are they telling you?
It's a mix of excitement and trepidation, right? There's been some good guidance that's being released by the administration and by components of the government responsible for both security and privacy. So agencies are being cautious right now while they're working to make sure that they're responding. A lot of and agencies at the same time that they're turning to their colleagues in government for guidance, they're also turning to industry, right? So they're asking firms like ours and you guys, what does make sense and what's appropriate. I think that it comes up in conversation with our clients a lot in that phrasing. The, hey, you know us, you know what our constraints are. Is there anything new about this that makes sense for us or not? Frankly, we've been doing that on other technologies for years, but there's no denying that the potential for AI in the CX space is significant. There are real applications. I think you're spot on, Ken. You said you ask yourself, you ask anyone talking about it, what AI? What you're looking for is, what's the use case? What are you trying to solve here? And is this the best tool for it?
We focus on our company, CX as a service. You and I have talked about this.
Yeah.
Where do you start with CX as a service? Outcome. What is the outcome? And then everything that leads up to that outcome gets built into this overall solution. If there is an AI solution that will get you to the outcome, then let's hear about it. How's it going to work? How's it going to make me better? And then it's a very specific use of AI as opposed to just saying, AI in general. Um, it's a very interesting topic. We hear about AI everywhere. And I think that there's a lot of trepidation too from a lot of companies because everybody's got, there's built a better watch, if you will. So, I guess you probably have, and I know we've talked about this, but, and I won't use the term innovation summit. That's an inside joke, by the way, guys. Or I think lab, I think we called it something like that. But I know you're constantly looking at what's out there, what's going to make us better, faster, more efficient, more effective, what's going to solve outcomes, what's going to solve the problem of the caller. You've got to be looking at that all the time, right?
Yeah, I mean, and and a big part of it is, well, I'm going to go back for a minute. You asked kind of near the beginning what some of those differences and challenges were, and between government work and industry work, and one of them is that plays into what you're talking about is what any one government agency or component or office has the ability to personally change and innovate. When a company wants to revolutionize their CX, they'll bring in a new CXO and give that CXO mandate and authority over nearly every interaction, over marketing out to consumers, over the web portal, over email, over web chat, over phones. In the government space, those components that I just listed off are often historically and even today housed in different components of the same agency. In some cases, with considerable sort of organizational distance apart from one another. And so there are some phenomenal, CXOs and CX operatives within the federal government doing great work. And the work for them is a mission of persuasion. It's a mission of working with all the various components of their agency or across agencies. There's been an enormous initiative, in fact, that was just awarded at the Sammys last week, the awards for federal service. An incredible initiative working to tie agency CX across agencies and across components of government together, focused around the kind of brilliant but elementary idea that people interact with government during major life events. That with a marriage, with the birth of a child, with college, right? With, unfortunately, a natural disaster or a death in the family, with entering service, with exiting service. And that working with the government in those times very rarely means today making one call, right? So there are many agencies set up to support individuals going through these life changes. So again, a key difference there is that the brilliant operators within the government doing this work often have to persuade and work through many different organizations and components to get the work done. Where that plays into what we need to do, and is we've learned from industry the criticality of what you were talking about, of looking at every interaction that you're having with a customer, with a constituent, in our case, as being part of a longer journey. That means being aware of what happened before, and it means predicting and being prepared for what comes next. And that gets really interesting, more compelling, and more complicated when the things that happened before and the things that may come next may involve a completely different agency, a completely different component of the government, may cross the lines between federal and state, or state and local. It's it's a complex mix.
I know Maximus is probably the most respected agency to manage work for these agencies. When you go to Homeland Security, and you say, hey, we want to deploy this particular, let's call it an AI tool into an engagement with you because this is what it'll do. You guys are so respected. Do you get a lot of pushback, or is it like whatever you guys think is good, we'll roll with that? I mean,
That's a great question. The first thing you do is get the security office comfortable. No matter where the interest comes from within the agency, whether it's coming from top down or whether the direct operator is a decision maker and can move forward or wants to move forward on a new solution or a new offering, anything, whether it's particularly new or not, if it's new to the agency, then the biggest gate is going to be the security gate, and rightfully so. Where we are respected among those things, on one hand, sure, operationally, I think it's fair to say that we're well known for size and for surge, right? If you need 15,000 people, you come to Maximus. If you need 1,500 people, but you need them tomorrow to answer calls, you come to Maximus. We do the same thing with P3, right? But the other side of it is on the security piece. That's the other piece where we're equally well known. That if you want a solution that's already proven FedRAMP, that's already got what's called JAB authorization, which is outside of a specific agency, ATO, and if you want a firm that can quickly work with your security office to provide the necessary paperwork, get things approved, get things moving, and keep continuous improvement on rails, that's the other piece of it. It takes a lot of work. It's you're right that it takes major focus on the part of a partner to lean into that.
You did talk about, and I wanted to ask you about scalability and surge. How do you prepare for that? Because I ride that roller coaster with you often. How is it you guys try? I know what we do, but how is it you stay one step ahead?
Honestly, this is where I've got to say thanks. That the much of it is phenomenal partnerships, right? You have to build long-term trusted partnerships built up over years of joint success. P3 is an incredible example of that, obviously, right? That you've got to be able to lean on people, and part of it is you be open and you prepare with your partners. So there are many significant surge environments that we participate in, that we serve the government on, that we can reasonably prepare for, that we know about, right? Sure, census back in 2020, sure, there were unknowns, but we know when Census Day is going to be. It happens every 10 years, right? We know how many thousands of people we're going to need for it. You can get ahead of that. Hurricanes are a bit different. There's certainly unfortunately seasonality around it, but anytime you're talking about preparing both technology and large amounts of staff for an unknown and unpredictable mission, there is risk for the companies involved, and it's one of the reasons why partnership and trusted partnership is so important, because it's the community and the industry coming together to spread out that risk and say, let's all take a little bit to make sure that when the time comes that our fellow constituents need that service, when we've got people in Maui driven out of their homes, right, or in Florida struggling to recover from hurricane damage, that that's one way we're able to come together and help make sure the government can respond.
I asked you about some of the challenges government faces in the CX world. What about advantages?
Oh, no.
Are there areas where the government has hidden advantages to tap into?
It's a good segue, Ken, because it really relates to what we were just talking about. There's a real advantage in our CX environment to getting to work with mission. That the work that I've been lucky enough to do over my career matters. When you get to help millions of Americans get insurance for the first time.
Right.
When you get to help survivors or returning veterans get the support that they need and the services that are due them as quickly and seamlessly and hassle-free as possible, that matters. And we found that there's a real tactical advantage in the competitive space for talent there. There are fantastic, talented people throughout multiple generations that we hire in right now that want to be part of that, that appreciate almost as a side benefit of the job that when they come in and they get trained for the work, that they're going back to their neighborhoods and back to their homes as Medicare experts, as Affordable Care Act experts, as that they're better able to manage their student loans because they've learned the best advice the government has to offer on how to move toward a debt-free life, right? They understand, they get to serve in healthcare. When we're lucky enough to be able to serve the US Census Bureau, it's incredible when we go to recruit and we'll interview individuals for a call center position, and they responded to an advertisement for the census, and they'll come in for an interview, and we'll ask them, what if any experience they've had. They'll say, oh yeah, well I did 2020, 2010. My mom did 2019, 9. It's a family mission at that point. Yeah. So I do think there's a strong advantage when industry and government are all competing for talented, empathetic people with great skills and the ability to convey important information out to callers. There is a real advantage to being able to draw on the importance of the mission and the I think the natural human desire to serve each other and to build up the country matters.
I've known you a long time, Evan, and you are I'm going to tell you, you're literally glowing with pride right now.
Yeah, a little bit.
No, but it's important because I know that when we work with you guys and we put people on it, they feel much better about the work they're doing supporting the government than they would be getting on the phone and listening to somebody complain that the blender that they bought at the department store doesn't work and they want to make and it's like, so they feel it's not really as fulfilling. People really take a great deal of pride in knowing that they are making a difference in human beings' lives and helping them take the next step toward whatever it is that they need. They like the fact that they don't feel like agents, they feel like advocates. And as an advocate, it's their job to do whatever needs to be done to solve that person's problem. And to your point earlier, sometimes it takes several conversations and phone calls. And I think about FEMA when we open up tickets and the follow-up that has to be done. And it's just a real joy to see agents who it's like, darn it, I'm not going to, until this person's fixed, I am not going to stop. And that really makes me feel great to see people take that kind of pride, to put that kind of effort into really making a difference. It's more than just a job. It really is. So, what you do is very complicated, but it's very, very needed. You do a great job at it. And I'm really appreciative of the time that we got to spend. And
always love sitting down and talking to you. Look forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you, Evan. It was a pleasure to meet you, and looking forward to having you back again, to Ken's point, as things are always changing. We can count on that. So thanks for another episode of CX on Point, and we hope you all make it a great day.